G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of DNA Reviews, and this time my A has returned. So how you going there, Mr. A?
I'm going well. I hope everyone can hear us fine without an echo this week.
Yeah, echo, 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 echo. Oh, there we go. G'day geeks. Oh, there we go. I prefer the term nerd myself, but do you consider yourself a geek or a nerd there, Mr. Aaron?
I don't know. I'm not either at the moment because I lost my bet. I didn't get who the first comment was going to be.
Oh, that's exactly right. Well, anyway, we've got a lot to cover. Oh my God, there's just like it's completely mind-spinning stuff. So we're not going to muck around. We're going to straight into it. Okay, so it's the fourth part of good old Ahsoka, Fallen Jedi, which is actually a bit of a what do they call the misnomer because it's not exactly clear which Jedi we're talking about, and there could be speculation regarding that. And of course, the end of the episode was a bit of an OMG moment, but we'll cross those paths as we get to it. And of course, in case you haven't seen the episode, it was last Wednesday, so you should have caught up with it by now. There will be spoilers. Very exciting stuff. So before we kick it off, Mr. Aaron, what do you reckon, mate? Last week's episode, exciting as it was.
It was an interesting one. It wasn't one you could be boring in. I think Fallen Jedi is Jedi plural.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things you can sort of discuss and speculate on. And I don't know about you, but there were things happening in this. I thought, I can't wait for this episode so we can actually have a bit of a natter about it because there's a lot going on. So let us kick it off now. I've had to rearrange some of the order of the slides because, we have shots here, we have shots there, and I just sort of grouped a couple of them together. So if you know the episode really well and you go, hang on, where's that bit there? It's missing. It's because I've just moved it to a bit later on. But we kick it off on the ship where we left last week. And I like this one from Hu Yang. He's doing a Grievous. So after last week, he was doing the Grievous thing, with the 4 lightsabers. Now he's doing his inner Chewbacca. This one goes there, that one goes there. Who knew? He knew how to fix the ship, but this was a bit of a cool way to kick things off, doing what he's got to do. And this is what I couldn't get. It's a dire situation. The ship has crashed. The baddies are up to bad things. And yet everybody is calm and natural. Like there's just no panic at all. And I thought that was really unusual that everybody should be so chilled out when there's like, get the comms up. We've got to tell the New Republic what's going on. What do you reckon?
I think it's the creative direction they've decided to go with this show, that when the Jedi are doing stuff to show that they're good Jedi, everything is calm and serene and good. I don't know. I would like a bit more urgency in it. It makes the show a bit soporific sometimes.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. Normally, let's say the ship's crashed, the baddies are up to bad things, they're about to put their last engine in. That's all right, Huyang, well, at your leisure, son. Just get the thing going. And everybody's just chilled. And I know probably from an observer's point of view, they're going, well, it's not worth panicking because, hey, there's nothing we can do. But they're not like helping the guy or anything like that. It's just a little bit too laid back from my view. I mean, it's almost as if when they were making that sequence, the cast didn't actually know what was going on until after the episode aired. And they go, oh, yeah, why weren't we like rushing around and sweating? So anyway, unusual. Yeah. So, yeah. So we're having this massive discussion between Sabine and Ahsoka. And, of course, Sabine's got this big thing about Ezra, right? It's been going on since the start of the series. And she finally realizes that there are actually bigger things at stake. So if Ezra comes back, then Thrawn comes back, and it's a bad time for everybody. And here you can clearly see that she's having a bit of a moment, not trying to get her head around what's going on. It's almost like you need to bash it into her and say, do you realize that what the issue is? We can't get Thrawn coming back because if there is, there's a big-ass war. And, of course, that's where I think it's here. The 4 words are mentioned, heir to the Empire. What do you reckon of that, Mr. Aaron? Did you spin on your heels on that one?
No, because it was in the trailer, and I reckon they only put it in the episode so they could use it in the trailer. It's one of those things which is, of course, a catchphrase to Star Wars fans, and as soon as, a certain age group of fan that grew up in the wilderness years that only had a couple of books, that's instantly going to draw you in, isn't it?
Well, I wasn't really much into watching the trailer, so there's a lot of things that I missed. I mean, I didn't have a moment, but I thought, that's very clever that they should put that in. So they're definitely suggesting that if Thrawn returns, whatever's left of the Empire, he gets control of it. So that once again pushes the whole Moff Gideon thing out the window. So whatever Moff Gideon thought he was going to get, he ain't going to get it, whether he's still alive or not. So either way, as some kind of monarch hierarchy thing goes, it's if Thrawn does turn up, they're going to go, here's the keys to the Empire, son. It's all it's all yours.
Well, the other thing I wanted to point out, and this has come up before, but I don't think we've really discussed it. Sabine is starting to, show something that Anakin had that was a flaw with his training as a Jedi. She has attachments.
Yes, actually, that's a very good. That's a That's a very good point, actually. So yeah, Anakin was attached to Padme, and Sabine's attached to Ezra. And when that happens, and this is a life lesson for anybody out there who's planning on getting into relationships: don't do it, because once you start getting obsessed with someone, shit goes down. It's going to go
I
bad.
thought you were going to say this is a life lesson for anyone out there listening who wants to become a Jedi Knight. Don't have attachments.
Don't get attached. It does make sense, and yeah, well, right. They actually do parallel each other quite well, which is kind of ironic considering the very last shot of the entire show. And of course, Ahsoka then asks Sabine whether she can count on her, and she goes, "Yeah, absolutely." And yeah, so about that, what can I say? I do like some of the imagery of the show, and we've discussed this before. This one I thought was kind of funny, right? It's the old "he's behind you," so the bad guy's on the right hand side there. I mean, once again, it's a classic trope. You know, the ship's being watched; they're about to be attacked. And mentioning, as I did earlier, about how everybody inside's pretty casual, you think they'd be waiting for this because they know they're going to get spotted. They know they're going to get attacked. They know things are going to go down. And no one's really caring about anything. And I thought, oh, yeah, I kind of don't get that. But it did look good. And, of course, you didn't exactly know who that dude was on the right. But, of course, we all knew, even from last week, that they were going to get sliced and diced. And that's exactly what happened. So
the imagery there, the imagery there actually remind me of Star Trek Into Darkness, the planet they were in at the beginning with the purple trees and stuff. And it looks good. It's really alien, but I thought it was a callback to that in some ways.
Well, there's probably some Lucasfilm links in there. They've probably gone to Industrial Light and Magic and said, "Have you got any plants with like really red trees?" And they go, "Yeah, funny enough, we do. We used them in a Star Trek movie like 10 years ago. Can we just borrow those elements and just shove them in the show? No one's ever going to notice." Well, we had the word starship get mentioned in the previous episode, and that was obviously a Star Trek term. And yeah, here you've got red trees. Who knows? It did look good, though. I won't deny that. But anyway, so that was what was going on there. The big bit of a build-up. We know what's going to occur. So we jump back to good old Stonehenge, right? And I like this one, right? So there's a lot of people standing around waiting for things to happen. And even Morgan says that the attack on Ahsoka's crew won't last long. So she already knows, even though they've sent the bad dudes off, that it ain't going to last. And I thought that was kind of cool. Now, there's something I've got to bring up here. I do not know if anybody noticed it. And I'm just going to make sure I got the right picture before I show it to you. I saw this moment, and I thought it is the shot of the entire show. And there's a question here from Tracy. Thought the same thing, Aaron, thought the number of Star Trek assembly. Yeah, exactly right. They're paralleling it everywhere. This one shot, right? It was milliseconds. And I saw it and I go, awesome. I don't know if you picked up on it, right? It was a blink and you miss it moment. When Shin turns around, she gives Morgan a dirty look, and it is like that fast. And I thought, magic. And I had to freeze frame it. It's spectacular. I loved it. And what it's telling you is that Shin does not trust and or like Morgan. And maybe it's the witch thing, and I think it is. But if you watch that scene back again, as she turns her head, she looks at Baylan, and then she just glances at Morgan. And I thought, magic moment. That was the money shot. Loved it.
Yeah, I think she doesn't like witches. I think they brought it up in a previous episode. So I think she has a distrust of her.
Well, yeah, I think so too, because once again, she doesn't know who Thrawn is and what Morgan's ultimate plan is. She's following Baylan. Baylan's following her. And once she learned that Morgan was a Night Sister, a witch, clearly she's like lost a bit of confidence there, and now Morgan's off her Christmas card list. But I thought that was a magic moment, and that one image just said everything. I thought that's absolutely fantastic. Fun terminology to mix the start. Well, yeah, it kind of does. I mean, sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. But anyway.
Next, you'll find out they have cloaking devices or something like that.
They do. Well, Star Wars does have cloaking devices. We saw that once in The Empire Strikes Back. No ship that small has a cloaking device. Oh, nerd. How am I? I'll just pull that one out. Excuse me while I bend over. I'll pull that out of my furry one. How's that? No planning.
The other thing I wanted to correct myself on, although I think it wasn't very clear in the series, I had hang-ups with this big henge being there, which they're back in this episode, being the map to Thrawn, because he's only been missing, a few years. I had a customer explain to me, and it is in the closing credits when you look at the it has images from the star map. It isn't actually the map to Thrawn, it's the map to where the Purgles go, and they know that's where Thrawn has gone. So that's why they needed the map, which I guess wasn't really explained too well in the series. When you watch the closing credits, it just does show the map, and it does show the images of the Purgles going to this place. And I thought, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, because it's the Purgles' migratory route, apparently. But I agree with you. I mean, it was always the impression, that's where it lands, is X marks the spot and Thrawn's standing in front of X.
Thrawn's there.
Yeah, so it's a little bit vague, and I think I'm trying to think if they even mentioned in the show. I can't remember now if they even said about it follows, or maybe they're just an offhanded comment that was the hyperspace migratory routes for the Purgles. So, but yeah, it was a little bit subtle, but they did give the impression: get the map, bang, there's Thrawn, party hard. So, interesting. That's a good point, though. Very cool. So, yeah, and once again, if you have to sit and analyze these things, and there's still things you don't understand, it's probably not being explained that well in the show itself. Very, very cool. Now, I did like this, right? They're always standing there looking at the water. Now, in this particular shot, if you were to tilt up, you see the actual ring in the sky, which I thought looked really, really cool. But there's a lot of shots of just these guys just looking at nothing. And I thought, I kind of get it, but there's a lot of stuff, and they just go stand because in real life they're probably looking at the volume and go, "Yep, it's still there. Yep, nothing's changed."
It was one of those things where they're at a location, it looks great, but maybe they should have some more diversity in the locations. I mean, when they were getting the hyperspace coordinates, I'm like, how slow can this thing go?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And see, Greg's on it. Yeah, Balin hasn't done a lot. He's sort of been standing there the whole time, and I kind of get everything's going on around him. So they've got all the ship fights in space, and they've gone off to tackle Ahsoka on the planet. And yeah, you're right. He's just sort of just hanging around. It's almost like, and up until this episode, almost until this episode, he's like the superfluous character. It's like, well, we've got nothing to do with it. I'll just stand there and look cool, dude, until this episode. Then he has something to do. Sorry, dude, cut you off.
I was going to say, I tell you what, music does make a difference because, if Balin had been standing there looking at the Eye of Sidon or whatever it is, and the John Williams music had been going for when Luke looks at the twin suns, it makes it a totally different scene, and it makes it one of those things that's very watchable. But because this is, I guess, not got that music and it's in a different situation, you have the same thing with two characters looking up into the sky, and it's not as Star Wars as it could be.
That's a funny one. It would be like a complete role reversal. Instead of one person looking at two suns, you've got two people looking at one sun.
Yeah.
Cute. Yeah, that's like a link that isn't intentional. Sorry, what was that?
Son of Suns. No,
Son of Suns. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Very good. Yes, that is like you put that in, and the fans just go, "Oh, is it planned? Is it like? Do you see the link?" And there's be like whole essays written about whether it was intentional or not, and they just said, "We didn't even notice that." But yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Dags. I don't know if you agree with me. His character is probably one of the most interesting characters in the series, and if you had had a moment like that where he's contemplating about what's happening, it makes what's following become a lot more interesting. I think maybe they were trying for that.
Maybe. Well, with that in mind. He does have some good dialogue in this episode. So when he says he lost his faith a long time ago, and you really have to sit and think, well, what is it that occurred? And in some of his dialogue, he's dropping some real hints, but very subtle hints about the things he's seen and experienced, and there's stuff regarding Ahsoka later on. And of course, you don't know about his backstory. I mean, he's been around for quite a long time. And I don't know if it'll ever get explained or whether it'll be covered off on a comic or sometime in this series. Who knows? And of course, as we know, he's not a fan of witchcraft because once he sticks the map thing in and all the dome pops up, that's what he just says, all witchcraft. So he may have had experience with the Night Sisters before. There's a lot going on there, and we're just being drip fed very tiny bits, but a lot of it is open to the audience's speculation. And I know that in Dave Filoni's case, some of that is intentional. He doesn't like to necessarily give you all the answers. You've got to try and sit and think about it. But it's very, very cool stuff. So yeah, a fair bit there. Either that or we're just reading too much into it. But either way, it's a lot to look at. But later on, he has some dialogue, which I will call up. And you do wonder, it's like, all right, where are we going with this? Like, what's the driving force? And yeah, not entirely sure. Why do good guys turn bad? He seems a little broken. Yes, he does. That's a good way of looking at it, actually. And anyway, we'll continue on. So we go back to the ship. Now, this bit, once again, we're about to get attacked, right? You think, okay, get the defenses going. Put the bookcases in front of the doorways and the wardrobes and hammer all the windows shut. None of that. That's all as boring as batshit. We're just pissing farting around with prop guns. And I've got to admit, prop builders will be loving this. They go, oh, if the thing goes, I've got to go do that with my prop gun. And I thought, mate, you're about to get attacked. You don't even know who by who. And everybody's just like as lazy as. I thought, where's the tension? It's just not there. So, oh well, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting way to build up for an action sequence. It seems, I don't know if they're going against the grain deliberately on this, or maybe they've made some wrong directorial decisions, but This episode was at least interesting. I do agree with what Tracy said about he seems a little broken. Sorry, going back to it.
Yep.
We've seen, through Obi-Wan, what happened to the younglings that were in the temple. They were kind of killed or corrupted and become Dark Jedi or Inquisitors. He doesn't really fit into that mold. He seems more of a, going along with it because he's disillusioned with what happened. So I find his character more and more interesting in every episode.
Yeah, I totally agree. I get the feeling, and I don't want to get into. I'll get to it when we get to it, because otherwise we're just going to be jumping the gun. But yeah, we are coming back to it, so don't worry about that. I agree, William. Batten down the hatches. They're not even worrying about
Yes.
that, right? And of course, when things go blink, all the lights go out. They automatically blame, say, "Oh, mate, he's cocked up again." It's like, Jesus Christ, guys, the poor bastard can do no right. I like this. It really was scrap fight, and who knew he could hold his own? There's a bash up between two robots, which always is very, very cool. And you do wonder why they punch each other. They're not going to feel any pain. I mean, it's just like bashing metal against metal. It's like, I mean, I know why they do it for the show, because human beings, we can relate to what's going on. A punch up is a punch up. But if actual robots were fighting, and if you've ever seen Robot Wars, which, to be fair, isn't like this, as in the TV series, you want to rip bits off, right? And disable bits.
I'll call you out as wrong here, Dags, because why would Jabba have a torture palace for robots if they didn't feel pain?
You know what? And as soon as you did that, and I thought straight away, oh, yeah, 3PO, that's right. He's got a bit of a thing. It's like, oh, that hurts. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, yeah, okay. Why would you put pain receptors in a droid?
Because humans are bastards. That's why.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, because that's right. Yeah, you're putting on 3PO's foot in the end of Empire. Go, oh, watch what you're doing, man. Yeah, okay. Point taken. But
look at the torture droid on that poor Gwonk droid where it's putting hot irons on his feet, kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Now, fair point. And I got that robot made you think of Real Steel. Yeah, fair enough. That's a good one. But I thought it was a really good moment. The two droids are beating each other up, and Huyang's holding his own, because you would have thought straight away he's just going to have arms and legs ripped off everywhere. Even though he does, I think, if I recall, lose at the end. But it was a good moment. It was really, really cool. And if you've ever seen movies like I, Robot, where two robots have a bit of a punch up, it is cool stuff. Especially if, unlike Real Steel, where they're being controlled by people, it's actually the droids that's getting straight at it. I reckon the people who animated that must have think this is going to be awesome. We can beat the shit out of each other, and it's still going to be PG no matter what, because there's no blood or anything. So. Absolutely fantastic. So,
well, that happens in the Transformer movies as well. That's just robots going at it for half a movie straight, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I tell you what, those fights are definitely more than meets the eye. So I thought that was quite cool, right? And he does his bit. It's all good and groovy. Now, I don't know if you picked up on this, right? Now, there's a lot of fight scenes in this, right? After last week, which was like effectively as boring as batshit. This time, there's lightsaber duels going on everywhere. And I don't. And this particular one, Ahsoka uses both sabers. And for later on, she just uses the one. And I don't know why. They don't get damaged. They don't get lost. She just uses the one later on. But she uses the two here. And I've got to say, if you're a fan of saber duels, there was some really good stuff here. It worked out really, really well. So it's our two heroes versus the two bad guys. And it was lovely to see. And, of course, before they go off, so they've just killed a few of the dudes, the local dudes, who we knew were going to cark it anyway. Do you like it? Huyang says to Ahsoka and Sabine to stay together. Okay, and this is their last light-hearted moment as a pair, right? And they walk off. Even Ahsoka smiles in this, and that's it. And of course, you mentioned earlier how when the two Morgan and Baylan are looking at the ship, it looks like from A New Hope. This could also be referenced back to Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin and Obi-Wan say farewell to each other and said, may the Force be with you, may the Force be with you. That's it. After that, they never see each other again as friends. And this scene kind of echoes that, because after this, they run off into the forest and they get separated. And even though Huyang said, you're better off being together, and of course that just does not happen. So it's almost like foreshadowing the future. And I thought that was a really interesting moment.
I actually thought exactly the same thing. In fact, I'm just going to be parroting what you said. I thought the lightsabers in this episode look beautiful. There's some examples where they don't look as good, and I thought all of them in this were top notch. And I was thinking the same thing about Anakin and Obi-Wan when they separated, and thinking, oh, this is foreshadowing what's going to go down, which we kind of do see.
Yeah. So if you could argue, or not argue, you could say that when Huyang says he's betting the two ladies are together and say, yeah, we'll be fine. Yeah, yes, your master, whatever. And it's all wonderful. And then it all just goes pear-shaped after that. Tracy said Huyang teaches lightsaber training. He should be able to hold his own somewhat. Yeah, fair enough. But I mean, this is like fisticuff training. So it's almost like he pulling out his torches from the second episode. Go, that's not 4 torches isn't going to work. But yes, it was actually good to see that he could because he could have gotten soft over those thousands of years, and that other droid could have beaten him up, but it kind of didn't. But we get into the saber stuff. It is very exciting, very cool. Marek, we'll talk about Marek in a sec. Channels, he's in a Darth Maul from TPM, Phantom Menace. The double sabers come out. Oh, this is what we want to see, some fighting. Absolutely loving it, right? And, of course, we get the standoff. Once again, for whatever reason, Ahsoka's only using one saber, and I'm curious to know why they chose that. And I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if you have any theories on that at all.
I thought maybe it was just to show variety in the fighting through the episode, so they could have different scenes with different fights. So a directorial choice rather than a story choice, because she was using one for one reason and two for another reason. I just thought it looked stylistically good.
You know what? It wouldn't surprise me if they said, "Oh, sorry, Rosario Dawson's injured a wrist. She can't actually hold the second one. We'll just give her the one, and then it's all good to go." So I don't know. It was just unusual that like she fights the droids with two, then she comes across effectively a real combatant and just chooses one. And I thought, that's just unusual, and it's not the last time we see it either. So anyway, no biggie. All right, now this is for fans out there. I know you know this, right? And this is for everybody else out there, right? He holds the saber, Marek, and the thing starts spinning around like a helicopter. And as we've seen in Rebels, you can actually fly with them, right? Which is unbelievably wanky. Do people out there know where the Inquisitor saber originally came from? I'm just going to pause for a sec while people think about where the idea came from. Okay, so now you know this. I'm sure you do, because you're a bit of a cool dude. So just quickly, first one's out there. Who knows where the Inquisitor's lightsabers, the concept, came from? So because we're going to show you a picture of it, because I thought it was just so cool. So what do you think of the fight scene, dude?
Well, I thought all the fight scenes were consistently good in this episode, so I thought this was good too. I did think, is it going to be, you know how people were saying, is it going to be someone we know from the past? Is it going to be someone under the helmet? This is where you're going to find out.
We're going to get to that in a sec. Yeah. Where we go. It reminded you Indiana Jones pulling a gun against the sword. Yeah, I suppose. But yeah, you think if she's going to have a serious fight, she'd bring out both weapons. In the animated series, Clone Wars, and that she always used the two sabers. Chrissy said lightsabers do it. They do, actually, and that was shown in Rebels. It's actually shown on screen. So when Ezra picked up Kanan's saber, and because Kanan was taller than Ezra, he said you can twist the knob, because it's always important to be able to twist the knob and get the thing to go shorter. And go, that is first. Haven't seen that one before. So Yoda's one. If Yoda's not paying attention and he twists it the wrong way.
So they also have a button for fatal and non-fatal, don't they?
Yeah, exactly right. So yes, they do have adjustable lengths. As to whether they all have them, because they're meant to be for an individual. I mean, why would you need a shorter or longer blade? Anybody's guess, unless you can use it as a knife or whatever. Okay, so where does the Inquisitor saber come from? The inspiration. Okay, bar mix is wrong. That's a good answer, but wrong. Helicopter. Well, as I said, they get used as helicopters effectively in what do you call it? In Rebels. Motor mower, no. A Dyson fryer, no. Two Jedi sabers get a knob at the end, exactly right. No, believe it or not, it came from the toy, the General Grievous toy from Revenge of the Sith, because he spins the sabers around, and they produced the toy of lightsabers that could do that. And of course, they love the idea of it. They actually turned that into the Inquisitor's saber. So you knew that, didn't you?
I did. It's one of those few times when the toys have actually influenced the series rather than the other way around.
Yeah, so there you go. So the Inky's spinning saber came from originally General Grievous's spinning saber in Revenge of the Sith, and that's how they produced it as a toy. And somebody thought the ring thing was an awesome idea, got to do that. But as we know, that trick never works. And before you know it, good old Marek is Gonski's, and in the end, he was nobody. All right, all that's fan speculation. He's Ezra. He's Barasofi. He was effing no one. And how about that? Now,
what was the puff and smoke and mist that disappeared though?
So what that is, it means that he was controlled by the Night Sisters, probably from Morgan, right? And this has been covered off, believe it or not, in Jedi Fallen Order, where they, which I've never played, where they can control zombies, zombie Jedis, whatever, make of that what you will. But yeah, so once the green mist came out, that means that there's a good chance that Marek was actually being controlled by her. So there you go. But he wasn't anybody. So all those ridiculously stupid theories, what a load of rubbish. So there you go.
It wasn't Grand Moff Tarkin. Oh no.
No, it was not. I mean, oh God, you know what? Some Star Wars fans, I just want to smack them in the head. So yes, exactly right. Very, very cool. What? This is a G-rated show. There's a couple of comments I can't put them up regarding the length of sabers. All right, so Marek is gone, right? He was an absolute nobody, and in the end, he was completely useless, right? That's the way it goes. I do like this reaction from Shin, right? Normally, it's like, oh, you've just killed the dude. I'm not happy. But the way she reacts is almost like she not had feelings, but was concerned about him. And I thought that was just different. I don't know if I read it as that. Other people might say it might have been shocked because maybe she was surprised that Marek was defeated. What did you think? Because I thought she was actually showing emotion here, even though she wasn't emotional.
Well, I thought she was shocked, but now you've told me what that green mist is. Maybe she thinks she's in next in line to be the zombie puppet from The Witch.
I hadn't thought of that. Maybe you're right. She thought he was a dude the whole time. Maybe she thought he was Ezra or Barasofi, and then it's like, oh my god, you're actually like a green Mister Dude. She's freaking out over that. I hadn't thought of that. That's actually very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, if the witch has someone who they're controlling, really, if it's a callback to that, and she's the next one in line, and she hates witches and she doesn't trust her, that sets up a whole lot of stuff in her head, doesn't it?
And you do wonder if it's going to come back later on. I'm going to put this on screen because it's not very often that people agree with me. Yes, loves my reaction. Could tell what you were reading. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I loved it. I think it's very, very cool. It was a cool moment. And you are right. Maybe she's kind of crapping herself thinking, oh, is that what happens to dead Force users? They become the product of the Night Sisters. But it was kind of cool. Very, very good. All right, so back to here we go. As we've discussed from a couple of episodes ago, a non-Force user versus a Force user in a saber duel, it should be absolutely no contest. And at least in this one, Sabine does lose. And I thought that was kind of groovy. So, because I thought, oh, come on, man, what's the deal with that? So,
do you know what's
interesting though, and it was very groovy. You go on, dude.
Having a bit of catch up since last week, I watched all of Rebels in the shop on and off through the week. Now, there are episodes where Kanan is training Sabine with the Darksaber, and he's training her in all the Jedi moves and defense against Jedis and fighting and stuff like that. So she does have more of a background in fighting lightsabers than I thought she had.
True. But as we sort of covered off, if you're a non-Force user versus a Force user, remember the idea of a Force user is that you can anticipate things ahead of time. You know, oh shit, what's the line from Phantom Menace? Instincts. What's the reaction? Reflexes. Yeah, really good reflexes. It would mean that Shin has the advantage over Sabine. So Sabine might be a human against a human, normal. Great, yeah, no worries. But she's against the Force user. That gives Shin the advantage. So
in Rebels, though, they were showing that she was anticipating Kanan's moves.
Yeah, okay. It could be just the way the training is. So that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, it doesn't matter. It did look good. It was very groovy. And, of course, Shin ends up defeating Sabine. I like this moment, right? Sabine puts the hand out and she's got no power. And I thought that was great. So he couldn't move the cup, couldn't do anything here. And I like that because in a normal trope, it would be, well, I couldn't move the cup. But now that I'm sort of upset and distressed and whatever, I'm going to conjure up the powers of the universe and suddenly make things happen. And I'm glad they didn't do it. And Shin obviously was expecting something to happen. Realized she had no power. I think there was a good moment. It was not something you would see every day. So did you see it like that?
I absolutely did, and you're absolutely right. It was a reverse cliche where I thought she was going to get mad because she was getting defeated, so was going to be able to use the Force. And when she didn't, I laughed, and I thought that was really good that they didn't magically ray her where she can use the Force suddenly when she needs it.
Did you actually laugh when you watched it?
Yeah, I did.
So I didn't. I thought that was kind of cool. Shin goes, shit. Oh, hang on, and it's like you have no power, and Sabine must be thinking,
oh,
yeah, I kind of.
I thought it was cool. I laughed in a good way. I didn't laugh that it was bad. So.
Okay, yeah, but I thought that was interesting that Sabine puts the hand out to say to do something, and of course nothing happens, and then she uses the big puffy magic thing to get away. And of course, you got to have Jack Burton reflexes. Yes, because as we know, it's all in the reflexes, as Jack Burton would say. Very cool. All right, now we get into the business end of the show. Okay, so. Back to Baylan. Okay, he's got to look after the map, and he's all alone, and he knows what's coming. In other words, Ahsoka's coming to join him, and I like it. When we left him, he's standing here as he is here. When Ahsoka eventually turns up, he's actually sitting down and taking a chill pill, and I thought that was kind of cool. It was just like because when you see him sitting down with the hooded cloak and from the side, you go, "Is that him or is that somebody else?" And it is actually him, and he knows she's coming, and I thought that was really cool. With that in mind, so. Baylan mentions how Anakin was once the poster boy Jedi, and we know that because that was highlighted in Revenge of the Sith. But he also knew that Anakin became Vader, and not many people did know that. So I'm kind of
Mm.
intrigued by that. And I was wondering, is this the reason he lost his faith? If the poster boy, the absolute cream of the crop of the Jedi, turns evil, is that enough to you to say, well, if that can happen to him, it can happen to anybody, and therefore I don't trust the institution that I'm a part of? I don't know if you saw it that way, but I thought one way to interpret it.
It is. It is interesting how all the Jedi at that time were touting him as the chosen one, but they didn't even really know exactly what the chosen one was. So um, he would have been a poster boy, and it would have been a huge disappointment and a huge shock when he went bad. And I did wonder if they're going to reveal him as one of the Jedi younglings that he went into the room to kill, or something
No,
like
no,
that.
he's too old. He's too old for that. I mean, so this is 30 years,
Mm.
give or
Yeah.
take. Yeah, he'd be like a teenager. The thing is, though, that as highlighted in Phantom Menace, I've got to use the M word, so just deal with it, fans. Like Anakin had a higher midi-chlorian count than even Yoda, so everybody would know that. They go, mate, he's the coolest cat in town because he's really got the bee's knees of juice. And of course, he was, even though he wasn't officially a master until like he got pushed onto the council later on, everybody would know who he is. So there's bad shit going down. Get Anakin, he saves the day. Yay team. If you've ever seen the Clone Wars, it's happening like that all the time. So for one, however, Balin found out that Anakin turned to Vader. That would have probably been enough to say, well, that's just shattered all my illusions. Maybe, putting it bluntly, Balin had a bit of a fanboy moment with Anakin. It's like, he's the coolest dude around. And of course, he's not. Now, Balin would have been younger than Anakin, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. I'm taking a guess. I don't really know that. I'm just speculating. And if that's the case, maybe he was looked upon as being, well, he's my role model. I want to be like Anakin. He's Anakin Skywalker. He's the coolest cat in town. And of course, Anakin turns bad. And maybe I don't know, Balin sort of went off the rails because of that. So anyway, just a thought. So
I do
very, very
hope
cool.
I do hope they kind of answer it this series, because as we know, he's passed away, so it's not very likely to be, unless I guess there's an animation or something like that, which could happen on Disney Plus. But it would be nice if some of these things that are brought up in the series are answered in the same series.
Yeah, it's a good point. And you never know, it might actually happen. And I agree with Guy. It's the disillusionment angle. I mean, as I said, that's just my theory, just based on what we've got. You know, you never know, find out more later on. Now, this is interesting, right? So Balin is talking to Ahsoka, and he mentions his relationship with Anakin. And I like the idea that Ahsoka says Anakin never mentioned because Balin didn't know him, or they didn't know each other, or whatever. And you do
Yeah.
wonder, now that he's actually mentioned, as in Balin's mentioned Anakin's name, does that plant a seed in Ahsoka's mind thinking, I haven't thought about Anakin for 30 years, you know, putting it simply, and yet later on he appears. And I do wonder if that was a way of linking the two together. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it was interesting that he brought it up. So yeah, I don't know. Did you see that at all? Did you draw those parallels?
I hadn't really thought about it until he brought it up. I did, when he did brought it up, I did think, oh, maybe Anakin is going to appear in this series. I hadn't gone into this with any spoilers, so I didn't know Hayden Christensen was
No.
going to be in it. So it was a big surprise to me. I did like that they were having a chat. I did wonder if she was going to go and sit beside him, and they sort of have a Princess Bride chat, you know, where he goes, you know, get your breath and everything before we go at it. Let's like catch up on stuff. And then they go, okay, we've got to do this thing. And I really liked that. It was a different dynamic between the good and the bad guys that Star Wars usually has, wasn't it?
It was, and of course, we don't know that much about Balin. It was a lot to sort of take on board. And as we've seen, and as this is all very new for a Star Wars show. He's not your typical be all and end all bad guy. He's like rule the universe,
Mm.
kill all the goodies. He's got a bit of grayness to him, so to speak, and not just his hair or his beard. And I agree with you. It was good that there was a bit of a chat between them. Okay, what is interesting? Balin believes that the Thrawn plan and the subsequent war is being necessary. That's the word he actually uses. But I'm trying to work out, if you destroy the New Republic for a new empire, why? What are you trying to achieve? And from his perspective, and that's the bit I don't get. There's something missing
Didn't
there. Now, if you're a
didn't
power
he
hungry person and you're working, hang on, give me a sec, and you work for the bad guys, I kind of get it. You're like, oh well, if the bad guys take over and I'm in league with them, I get a promotion, I get extra cars and pay checks and whatever. But from his perspective, I don't know why he looks upon the New Republic as being needing to be destroyed. I'm missing something, and I don't know what it is. Go for it, dude.
I don't think it's explained, but I do think in episode 2, Shin actually asked him, didn't she, what he was doing this for, and he said more power than you can imagine or something.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to be the power hungry kind of person. That's the bit I'm not
No, it
sort of
is
getting. Yeah.
I totally get you. That is weird. He seems to be in a very grey area, not even knowing if what they're doing is right. He's almost doing, you know, the ends justify the means, but he doesn't actually really want to be doing it. It seems, he said, "Oh, it's a shame we have to kill Jedi," and like he doesn't seem really fanatical about what they're doing. So I really do hope they go into his backstory. Maybe they do a flashback for one whole episode and show what's happening or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah, because I mean, at the moment, the world's at peace, the New Republic's in town, and you go, well, okay, why is that a bad thing from his perspective? What is it that he doesn't like or doesn't trust, and why does he think, now that's all got to go? Thrawn and the new Empire need to return, and that's just not being made clear, and it's a bit unusual. And as like with the situation with Morgan, right? If Thrawn does come back, starts up a war and all this sort of business, who's to say that Balin doesn't get like ousted and gets shoved off into the boondocks somewhere? Sorry, dude, you've served your purpose. Out you go. Kind of weird. That's the bit that's a little bit grey, and I don't know if they eventually explain what his motivation is, whether it works on the level of like, yeah, okay, kind of sells or it doesn't sell. So,
well, you've got to remember they're taking some of the story at least from Heir to the Empire. Maybe he wants to be the Jedi that, or the Force wielder that stands beside Thrawn and controls the entire Imperial fleet, kind of thing. You know how Thrawn wanted a Jedi or someone who could wield the Force to help pull the Empire together and all of that kind of stuff. It was a big thing in the book. They haven't really done it in the series, so who knows?
Either that, or from his perspective, he thinks the dark side of the Force is the way to go, and of course, you can't do that in the New Republic. He wants to start up a new Sith temple thing. I don't know, but it's very vague at this stage. All right. Tracy said about the Ahsoka Anakin thing. Could the witch have put the thought of Anakin in her head? I wouldn't have thought so, because Balin brought it up. It wasn't Morgan. So, and he mentioned it for some reason. And there's more to come regarding that. So sit tight, kids. Very good. So, and once again, Ahsoka's only got one saber. Don't know what the deal is with that. So you would have thought she'd bring out the two of them against him, but she doesn't. And I said, oh, yeah, fair enough. And it's a really good fight, right? Balin really does hold his own, and I was really, really impressed. And it was a long build-up, as you said, which was very, very cool. It was a great fight. I mean, I actually thought, there's a massive age difference between them, that it was going to be a bit of a one-sided contest, and it wasn't. And I found that really quite enjoyable. Now, he says that Ahsoka's legacy is of death and destruction. And I do not get where that comes from. It's like, where?
No, I was thinking
with that.
I thought exactly the same thing. I was like, are we going to be revealed stuff that we don't know about her? Why Sabine doesn't trust her and didn't really want to hang out with her, and why he is saying this? Because it doesn't really fit what we know about Ahsoka, does it?
It doesn't. And that's the thing. And I thought, is he referring to the Jedi Order as a whole? Now, if you were to look at that, you can take it in different ways. You brought up the whole thing with the younglings earlier on. So you take the younglings as little kids and you train them, they become Jedi, and they become part of the family, but they're effectively brainwashed into living that lifestyle. And if he was connected to that in some way or saw it happening, would he be classing that as death and destruction? I don't know. It's stringing a bit of a long bow. Not entirely sure, but it was bizarre. It's like, okay, what did she do to warrant this terminology, death and destruction? It's like, I know he's linked, maybe he's referenced Anakin as being the harbinger of death, and that's true. But how does she fit into that? There's something missing here, dude. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I said, I thought that was a bit strange, but maybe in a future episode. Remember, we're halfway through the series, so they've already got to start resolving all the questions they're putting up, unless it's going to, roll over into a different series.
Yeah, it was good, an interesting discussion, and it would be curious to see where it's going. Regarding the second saber, I've got to admit, this is kind of funny. Ads has said, yeah, she forgot to charge the second one. Yeah, exactly right. The battery's gone flat. They used to do Energizer commercials regarding lightsabers, and the battery's going flat. Long story. William said one saber is easier to wield than two. Not for Ahsoka. She wields two of them all the time, right? As we saw even earlier, just in the same show, in the same episode. So normally for her, she holds one normally and the other one backwards, and she swings them, and away we go. All right, so here we go. Maybe he had a child or family member that was a young kid. I think it meant to be a young kid. Yeah, it's clear there's something there, and we just don't know what it is. So either way, he thinks that she is a bit of a bad cookie, even though in all the series we've ever seen, she's always been a goodie. So there's something missing there that we don't know anything about. All right, now this you had to have a bit of a laugh at. I don't know if you picked up on this. I did. Now she takes, as in Ahsoka takes the ball out of the thing, and it's as hot as hell, right? And I thought, we're straight. It's our Raiders of the Lost Ark moment. She's going to have the imprint of the map on her hand. So when they're going to go off to the galaxy later on to find Thrawn, they know where to go. It's written.
Yeah, I actually thought that too. What would have been really funny if she'd done that, and every time she opens her hand, it projects a stellar map out into the stars, kind of thing. That would be really funny. I did think
But the
that
problem is
though.
where they need to go to is written on the other side because you've got to take back one Kadam. Very good. Yes, sorry, young. Yeah, I just realised not young king, young Link. Yes, there's something about that actually. Yeah, there's something. He's a toy, as you said. As Tracy, you said, he's a broken dude, and there's something about that. Anyway, we'll see where it all kind of leads. Yes, very very cool. Ahsoka, right after she thinks Sabine's been killed and she sees Sin, I reckon she touches the dark side for this. And I thought, oh, that's something you don't see every day. And of course, that then makes Baylan think, yep, that's exactly what I said. See. That was a good moment. Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, we're going to go through the sequence now. I really hoped they'd pushed it further. I really hoped she had killed her, because she was so mad that Sabine was dead. And then I was really hoping that Sabine was going to go over and become his new apprentice. Because that would have shocked me, and that would have been something that I wasn't expecting and different. And I bet they had discussions. Oh, do we do that? No, it's pushing it too far. But this is where I thought this episode started to get really interesting.
With that in mind, and I agree with you, would she, as in Ahsoka, have been justified in killing Shin? And then, of course, like Ahsoka does the whole thing, smashes her against the rock, touches the dark side. Sabine then comes back later on, and Ahsoka realizes, oh, she just murdered somebody, and it would be effectively murdering someone. Yeah. What happens? And I agree with you. It could have put a very interesting spin on the entire story as it was there. But yeah, I think
sorry.
Go.
I thought she was going to choke her and smash her against the wall and kill her, and then Baylan was going to say, "So you do have some of your old master in you," kind of thing, or something like that. And then it was going to be a more charged lightsaber battle.
I think had it been a George Lucas production, that's probably what would have happened. And I think, unfortunately, in this case, I mean, you do have to think the Disney Lucasfilm, who's the audience, young kids, whatever. Ahsoka's the good guy, good girl, the goodie. Yeah. Can't have her killing some that we know didn't kill Sabine. We know Sabine's alive. And
could you imagine, though, if they did that and they took Sabine, that has been a favorite character for a long time, and full on turned her and made her bad, and that was it? That would have been an awesome move that no one would have ever seen. That would have been really good.
And I bet in the writer's room, they probably thought about it, and they go, nah, it's in the too hard basket. It's going to alienate a whole lot of the audience, and they've got to play the safe card. And effectively, we haven't the safe card.
We haven't got the budget for those yellow contact lenses. We can't do it.
But yeah, it is interesting. Okay, they got to work within their means. But I thought, the attack on Shin was really cool, which then brought up this. And I thought, hang on, is because the way Baylan reacts, because even he says, look, Ahsoka's surrounded by violence, and he's just seen it firsthand. He just smashed his apprentice. And I thought, hang on, is it a possibility? I mean, I'm just putting this one out there, that she is actually his daughter. And because she would be young enough, she would have been born after the Clone Wars. And even though they go the master, apprentice sort of thing, just the way he reacts, which is ironically is similar to how Ahsoka reacts when Sabine's missing. Is there something in that? And I thought maybe there isn't, but I kind of liked it. But he was actually not a happy camper over that.
Yeah, maybe one of the witches is her mum and she doesn't even know it.
Well, you don't know. I liked it. I liked the way she reacted. Adds Grease, he would have cancelled the subscription. So unfortunately, they do have to play the safe card, which is a bit of a shame for shows like this because they've only got 8 episodes to just cover it all off. It is what it is. But everybody's having a rough trot of it. Ahsoka thinks Sabine's been killed, so she gets angry. Baylan thinks Shin's been killed, so he gets angry. No one's happy. So,
Yeah. This was a good episode. I did not predict any of this. At least it had me thinking of, what's going to happen now? And I do, after the last couple of weeks, I'm like, at least I really want to see what happens next now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking, please don't end. Just get us through to the end to see what's going on here. He reacted when Shin tried to kill Sabine. Yes, and I'm coming that off in a few ticks. Daddy-daughter problems, it would explain. Well, actually, there is no problem between them. They're actually quite in harmonious sort of unity together. It's just that when he thinks that she's been killed or badly injured, he gets a bit upset. It makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah. And he doesn't want to break it. Oh, yeah, which we're going to come across that in a second. Okay, so this is the key moment, right? And this is the one where the fans got a bit upset about. Sabine's got the gun, holding the map, right? What's she going to do? Is she going to blow it up, right? Now, of course, I don't know about you, but it's like, well, it's not entirely sure where it's going to go. And, of course, Balin and then turns the saber off and does the heart-to-heart with her and discusses her family. You know, her family's all been destroyed and killed, and her history with Ahsoka. He knows something that even we don't know. So there's a connection there we're not even aware of. And, of course, Sabine's doing And, of course, the whole thing is if she destroys the map, then in theory, they'll never get Ezra back because Ezra's withdrawn and they don't know where they are. They're off in Nana land somewhere. So how did you see this, dude?
Why didn't he grab the map with the Force?
Yeah, well, that's true. Could have done that, just gone ding, look with the ball. Yeah, exactly right.
And maybe her gun at the same time, like in Cloud City with Han's gun. Why was he worried about the map? Because when he tried to destroy it, he put a lightsaber through it for a good 3 or 4 seconds. So I don't think a blaster would have done anything to that map.
Yeah,
I thought it was more about psyching her out than the act of getting the map back, because he could have grabbed it with the Force. He was actually trying to turn her, and he was getting into her head. So what I was asking was a rhetorical question, because I think it was more about getting into her head, making her think about her relationship with Ahsoka and her friends, and what was more important, mindlessly becoming a Jedi or going after Ezra, who, she obviously cares for and loves a lot. So I thought it was really interesting that a dark Jedi was using someone's, love and care for someone else to actually flip them to the dark side.
Yeah, maybe he's seen this sort of thing before maybe wherever Shin came from, he sees a bit of her in Sabine, if that makes sense. And you are right. It's like if I can get this person to hand over this thing willingly, it's different. It's something unique, because you are right. Because you've just used the power and killed her and moved on with it. But no, I don't know. It could be the way of making yourself feel better to say, well, I'm in this situation. I need the map. She's about to blow it up. Maybe I can talk her out of it. And if I talk her out of it, that is very groovy, and she actually gives it over willingly. And of course, as the audience, we don't really know what she's going to do, all right? And we don't know how the scene was going to play out. Now, of course, Ahsoka's dropped off the edge of the cliff. I mean, you think she's just going to jump straight back up again, and the show will just continue on as normal. But of course, that doesn't happen. And I thought, yeah, there's a bit in this, and I think the writers have taken some good moments to say, well, okay, this is what would normally happen. Let's just twist it around and do the opposite. And whether it works for the fans or not is a good thing. So
the other thing I was thinking, does Sabine have a good life? Because you saw in the episode, she drives out into the middle of nowhere. Her home is still up the tower. She just lives with her cats, basically. She's going to turn into like a cat lady if she doesn't do anything with her like that. And, when we see it in the first episode, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. She's on this planet. She rides speeders around. But when you think about it, she's got a pretty empty life where she is. Finding Ezra is probably a bigger temptation for her than like being, mastering the Force and becoming a Jedi Knight.
Well, it's a good point, because, when the Rebels universe, they're all one big happy family, and they've all sort of gone and scattered. Zeb's gone off to somewhere he's got to go, and here he's becoming general. And you're right, Sabine stayed on Lothal, and she's on her own. So, yeah, right. She wouldn't be having a happy life at all. And maybe, I don't know, there's a fair bit to take on board regarding this, but it's interesting to see how it played out, and it's not what we expected. Balin just didn't go completely psycho and chop her to bits, and Sabine didn't go nuts and start shooting everywhere. It was a real tender moment, even though, Tracy just wanted to see what Emperor did to Anakin. So, yeah, that's
yeah. Ad said she's living at Ezra's place. Obviously, then, like, her finding Ezra is more important to her than training with Ahsoka, I would think.
That's a good point, actually. Moved into his digs. Yeah. So there's more to it than what we expected. In any event, Balin does the big talk to Sabine. There's a tense moment. What's she going to do? What's she going to do? Now, I read a lot of fan reviews about this episode, and the fans went off their nut when she handed the ball over. It's like, what are you doing, Sabine? And we saw this earlier on in the episode. It's the one-track mind, right? Forget the wars, forget the Thrawns. I need Ezra back. Balin can bring him back. And she hands the ball over. And I really like that, even though a lot of fans have said, no, Sabine, we don't like her anymore. It's like, come on, guys, cut us some slack. and it was a good moment,
It's
and she did it willingly. And I guess that was the
absolutely.
thing for Balin's point of view. If he can get her to do something willingly, and there's no force involved, then that means effectively he's won. And I was really impressed by that. Sorry, man.
It's absolutely human nature, though. I mean, if you were talking about a family member, if you have a son or a daughter and someone says to you, well, look, if you give me this, it's going to cause a war and probably billions of people that you don't know might suffer because of it, but you're going to see your family again. You're
Mm.
probably going to go with see the family again. I mean, because consequences to people you don't know don't weigh as much as consequences to the one person you care for the most.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it was a good moment. Where are we? Da, 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 da. As I said, we've seen Zeb. Yeah, it was in the Mandalorian where he's running off with the rebel, what do you call it, pilots and whatever else. So the family is effectively split up. That's the reason why Sabine has probably just gone back to
Mm.
Lothal and just hanging out there. So very interesting stuff. There's a fair bit there. Yes, very, very cool. And you are right, as Tracy mentioned earlier. I mean, he didn't break his word about hurting her, and I thought that was good because in a normal bad guy, he would say, "Okay, I lied," just end up killing her. But Shin starts to choke her, as in Sabine, and Balin sees he's got to protect her. And I thought, well, that is actually very cool. So I liked it. Did you see this
I
coming?
thought that No, I didn't. I thought that was fantastic as well. I did think he would keep his word just because of the way the episode was going. I did think that he's maybe got one eye on her, maybe a new apprentice, just in case.
So you do wonder how many people thought that he was choking her. He's got the ball off her. She starts, and you're thinking, "Oh, you
Yeah,
bastard! You've gone back on your word," and not realizing it's Shin who's now woken up with a massively bad headache. That was cool. And of course, he
yeah,
stops her from doing it. He's like, "Shin, release him, release her."
yeah.
That was very groovy. So
Yeah, you've got dark helmet there going fooled you, kind of thing, and going back on his word.
yeah, absolutely love it. And as you said about the ball, yeah, he's got to stick the saber through it, mate. That's going to take a fair bit of glue to stick that back together. So, yeah, absolutely love it. It was a good moment. At this point, Ahsoka's still gone, so we don't know what's happened to her yet. And Sabine's handed the ball over, the map over, and we are good to party. So very good. Now we're going to stop it there. Moving on to a sequence that occurred earlier, we're just sticky taping them all together, right? So Hera has jumped on a ship. She's just disobeying orders, and she's heading off. And I like this comment, right? She says, "Once a rebel, always a rebel." But strictly speaking, there's nothing to rebel against. Their government
Mm.
is in power. It's like, why would you be what do you call it when you break the laws for something? Disobedient. For when it's your own sort of government, it doesn't make a great deal of sense. We know as the audience what's going to happen, and of course, if the sequel trilogy never existed, you wouldn't know. We wouldn't know this. It's like, well, hang on, why are you breaking the rules? Because strictly speaking, they don't know if there's any threats yet. So I thought it was kind of funny. So
I
anyway,
I
keep
kind
going.
of agreed with what she's said in this series a couple of times. She's a general. She doesn't really need to ask anyone if she wants to go and do a secret mission. She's doing a secret mission for the Republic kind of thing. I thought she would probably be high enough up in the military that politicians couldn't, you know, like tie her hands as to what she can do. She's a general.
Yeah, and you think her promotion to a general would have been legitimately earned, right? And then you
Yep.
suddenly were like, it's not like in real life. Funny enough, it happened in Russia recently, but you get generals to just go off on the rails and start doing their own thing. But they're in power. The new republic's in power. The world is good. So you think everyone would toe the line. But anyway, doesn't matter. She's going to break the rules. It's just what Hera does. Now, Tracy brought up why take on an apprentice who has no force? What's the attraction to Sabine? We discussed this an episode or two ago. It makes no sense why she's trying to train Sabine. Jason would be the most logical one. We'll go back and grab Grogu off Din. They're the two that you'd focus on, not Sabine. But anyway, this is how the show's written. All right. I like this. Yeah, once a rebel, nope, just an anarchist. Even if it's against your own government. I mean, what happens if they fly out to a Nana land and there's nothing there? And they go, you know what, you've just used all these resources and wasting time for nothing. For Rebels fans, you get
Or
to see
just
the ghost finally appears on screen again in live action, but this time in this show, which is kind of groovy. If you like that sort of thing, you get excited by it. Yay, team. Carson Teva returns. So he's a bit of a regular dude who's popping up in different shows, which is kind of cool. And we get to this bit here, right? And like they finally arrived. Yes, they've got the hyperspace ring. Okay, now of course it's the old thing. If some dudes, because they go through all the different X-wing ships, and they've got all these different pilots, and straight away, if you want to use the Star Trek analogy, some of them are wearing red shirts, and they're not going to get through this.
yes,
I'm thinking,
if you
oh, hang
if
on, there's a Rodian. Oh yeah, that one's got to go. There's a girl. Oh yeah, she's got to go. This dude, oh, he's definitely got to go.
I was going to say, as soon as you saw the roadie, and I'm like, he doesn't have to survive this fight, whatever happens. And yeah, you're right.
But
Who would
it
have
did look
thought?
good. Sorry, go on.
Who would have thought she pulled the holdo maneuver on them?
Oh yeah, what can I say? You got to have one of those. And of course, I'm sorry, I've got to stick with the Star Trek thing. I laughed when I saw this. It looks like the warp core.
Well, I was going to bring that up too. It really did look like the warp core. It's the first time I was like, wow, they've got a warp core in this thing. So I did think that had to be deliberate, especially the way it was lit up as well.
So when Morgan's talking to the droids and saying we're powered up, ready to go, she just goes, warp factor 9, engage. Oh my God, what are the chances of that? All right. So, and I did like the fact, right? The ships are coming straight for us. Morgan just says, nah, fly through them. How lucky is it that there's a big hole, a big donut in the middle for the ships to go through? And I've got to say, that was a damn cool effect, right? And I did like the fact that a few ships do have a stack. Because if you remember the Rebels days, we hardly ever lost a good guy. And in this case, you can tell Carson and Hera are going to be okay, but a couple of the others, then it's not going to end well for them. And I did like that they did that. Not just keep it typical where all the good guys just get through without a scratch. And I thought that was a good moment. And some people have said it echoes a little bit what happens in Last Jedi when the ship blows up and it's all in silence, and the Supremacy gets damaged and whatever. I thought it was a really good moment.
I thought it was good too, and anything that looks like the opening sequence to Doctor Who is a thumbs up in my book.
Oh yeah, it does look that. I thought that too. I was like, stick a little frigging phone box in the middle of it and away you go. Guy's right. It is a big warp core at that, an effing huge one. So they're very, very cool. Shit's gone down, and while that's going, Hoyang, he's finally got everything working, and he comes out and everybody's buggered off and left him. And this is a nice little moment. He's gone out and says, "Where?" He's going, Mistress Sabine and Mistress Ahsoka. And of course, he said, stick together and you'll be right. And they've completely separated and everything's gone completely arse about. And he's just left there on his own. I thought that was a really nice moment.
I thought that was good too. I did think it was funny that probably this episode had the most happen in it, and he's on the ship and doesn't realize anything went on. So I thought that was a nice way to sort of end it up.
Indeed. All right. And then, this is where it got all a bit everywhere. Okay. And I thought this is a cool moment. So we look from the top down view of the edge of Stonehenge. We get into the water. Beautiful dissolve. One of the outstanding moments of the show. And we end up with our Ahsoka's Two Towers Gandalf moment. And of course, that then brings us into this. And I thought, if you've never watched Rebels, you're going to be, and you're completely confused as to what's going on in this show, you're going to be completely juicy-fruited trying to work out what the freaking hell is going on here. What do you reckon, dude?
Well, I presume she's dead because she's in the world beyond worlds, isn't she?
Well, that's the thing we don't know. So for those who've never watched Rebels and have no idea what's going on, there's a section in the show where they have what they call the world between worlds. It would take a long time to explain what it is, where it is, and how it works. But effectively, it's a juncture between time and space, which does sound like Doctor Who. And Ahsoka has actually been there before. If you look at the top up here, that's Ezra there, and he actually pulls Ahsoka into the world between worlds when she's fighting Vader and is about to lose and about to die, right? I won't go into the Mortis thing. That's going to take way too long to explain. But it's a whole story arc within Rebels as to the world between worlds. And now Ahsoka has ended up in it, right? If you don't get it, I get it. You don't get it. It's a lot to absorb, and if you really analyze it, it will do your head in. It's really hardcore. The whole Mortis thing is just something. And most fans have just said, you know what, I'm not going to take it on board. It's too hard. But you are right. Does this mean that Ahsoka has died in the fall, or is currently drowning? And that is an interesting sort of question. So if she does come back, will she become like an Ahsoka the White? Or is she currently immortal because she's been in the world between worlds before? So that was really out of left field. And as I said, it has a link to Mortis, which if you've never seen it, that was in the Clone Wars. You'll have no idea what that is. But how did you take all this, dude?
Well, firstly, I thought this was a really well-structured episode where it had multiple climaxes where you're like, this happens, how do you top this? This happens, how do you top this? And then this happens. I'm like, well, they topped it again because I did not see this happening. So I didn't really know how to take it because the episode then ends when it gets really good. And like you, I don't know if you were saying, please don't end, please don't end, please don't end. And then it ends.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the trailers. I don't know if this was mentioned in the trailers. I didn't read any spoilers, but of course, Anakin comes back. Dare I say it, deep faked, and I like that. It was a comment from a fan. The deep fake of the Force is a pathway to many facelifts, some considered to be unnatural. He kind of didn't look as cool as he could have looked, but he was there. And of course, the funny thing is, this is his Revenge of the Sith look, and he never met Ahsoka when in the film. So we've never actually seen the two of them, like him looking like this and her looking the way she does. But he calls her Snips, and the first time we've heard that in bloody 15 years. And Anakin is there now. It kind of worked. I mean, a lot of people kind of spun out by the deep faking and the de-aging or whatever, and it didn't work for some people. I kind of get that. Maybe push past it. I'm sure some fans will do a better job of it, and he'll look absolutely Mickey Mouse. But what do you reckon, dude?
I don't mind that kind of stuff. I grew up where the actor that played Travers on Blake 7 changed between seasons and no one cared. So as long as it's the same character and they do it well, I don't mind. If people are worried about the deep fake stuff, how many people complained when they didn't de-age Anakin for Obi-Wan? Disney can't win. It's more the story for me. And it was a great cliffhanger and great to see him. Great to see them together live action. Will we get more than a couple of minutes of this next episode, or will it continue through the rest of the series? We just don't know.
Yeah. So this has brought up an interesting theory, right? And this is going to put a bit of a spin on it. So the world between worlds means you can sort of see the past, the future, and whatever else. Here's a conspiracy theory that has been brought up. Okay. And I'm going to read this one out. So an interesting theory has now come to light. Ahsoka's in the world between worlds with Anakin. Okay. So in the live action Star Wars series, the only thing set after Ahsoka is the sequel trilogy, right? The 3 movies. That's it. Nothing else. Mm-hmm. Everything else has been before that. So if Anakin shows Ahsoka the future, so she gets to see the destruction of Luke's Jedi Academy, the New Republic, which gets blown up in The Force Awakens, the rise of the First Order, the Final Order, and even the return of the Emperor, right? She gets to see it all before it's happened. Okay, this is 25 years right now before the Force Awakens. Could then Ahsoka go back to where she just fell off the cliff, return to the galaxy far, far away, and then change the current timeline of events? So in other words, what happens in the sequel trilogy doesn't happen. So she does go back to the New Republic, say, yes, there is something called the First Order that's going to be created. There's a thing on Exegol. There's the Final Order, blah, 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 right? Kylo Ren, the Knights of Ren, yada, yada, yada. If that happens, does that mean that Lucasfilm / Disney then wipe out the entire sequel trilogy and relegate it to, if you want to use the alternative timeline, the Kelvin timeline, and allow them to create an all-new canon past this point because a lot of fans did not like the sequel trilogy? That's really putting it out there, but this is kind of leading in that direction. What do you think?
No, I think that's a big no, just because this rumor's been around for at least a couple of years. So I think it's just been dredged up again. I don't personally like it when that happens, because even if I don't like the sequel trilogy, which I do, there are people who do like it. And is it really fair to just erase it for the people who do like it because another group of people don't like it? I think you just move on and make new stories. Don't try and erase the past. Maybe Anakin tells her about George Lucas selling to Disney, and she goes back and stops that from happening. Who knows?
Yeah. Love it. Very good. It sounded like more, Christy, you sound like more like Days of Our Lives than Star Wars. Actually, Christy, speaking of you, that's the end of my slides. I need your crimson yawns. Okay, if you can send it through for this episode, the more yawns, the worse it was. The less yawns, the better it was. It's an interesting theory. I personally don't think they'll do it either. Right? And you are right. There's been rumors for ages that they're going to wipe out the sequel trilogy. But there we go. Rumors that she tries to change the fall of Anakin, but it always happens and stays. No, that's not going to. Oh, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'd be surprised if they went that far back, because then they really will have to de-age everybody to try and make that work.
Maybe they'll erase all of Star Wars and create a galactic federation.
Well, yes, exactly right. I don't really know. So, but it's a good one. It's some really good stuff there, and I really like it. So there you go. But yeah, I don't think it will happen. But it's interesting that people are thinking that way. It's like, oh, you could just restart everything and then continue on, and the sequel trilogy never occurred. So very, very cool. That's the end of our slides. I'm going to get to Christy's Crimson Yawns in a second. Just before we are about to finish up, because we're running a little bit behind schedule, don't forget, if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the Sci-Fi Zone socials on YouTube and Twitch and all these other places. Lots of stuff going on, which is very, very cool. And of course, you've got Aaron's store in Blackburn. You've got to make sure you check it out. What do you reckon there, dude?
Yep, I was just saying to Dags earlier, we have bought more in the last 3 weeks than the previous 12 months, so we're bursting at the seams with stuff. Thanks to Colin, if he's still around, he came in the week, and so did Kelvin, so it's been lots of people with the show coming in. We've got a ton of stuff. Dags is there on the weekends, every second Saturday, if you want to come in and have a natter with him. Or I'm there just about all the time.
Very, very cool. Now, Colin's it's effectively echoed what I said about Anakin showing her the future, and she makes changes to it accordingly. So it'll be curious to see if that occurs. And they can do it because other than the movies, which are still 25 years later, they can make all sorts of changes. Shane has made a point of saying that the US and UK getting cinema releases. I have actually heard that for the next episode, for episode 5. So, and as we've said, some of this stuff looks that good in the cinema. It would be absolutely spectacular. Very cool. Oh, yes, good. Yes, Ahsoka becomes a Time Lord. Timey-wimey stuff. Absolutely fantastic. And regarding to our Crimson Yawns, we love Christie's Crimson Yawns. She's a straight shooter. She has gone for the full 6 yawns, which unfortunately comes out as 4 out of 10. So it's definitely an improvement over the last week and the previous weeks. But it's good that she's gone for 6 yawns, best yet, and that's not saying much.
Well, I thought it was.
What do you reckon, dude?
I thought it was an entertaining piece of television. I mean, did it save the series? Probably not, but it was really good to watch. I enjoyed it. I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10 just for that episode, not the whole series.
Yeah, I found it was engaging enough to go, well, where are we going with this? And I do like the fact there was a bit of unpredictability, a little bit of like, oh, where are we going? I just said that about how the characters were interacting, the fact that some things weren't predictable. But I do like the little character moments. And a lot of people saying Balin is like the star of the show. He's the breakout character for the whole thing. For me personally, I really go for Shin. I reckon she's fantastic. Morgan is just the typical bad guy. Ahsoka's as boring as batshit, and Sabine, well, she's all over the place. So, it's interesting to sort of see the dynamic between the characters and where they're going and what they're going to achieve. So, I did like it. I was watching and thinking, I hope don't end right now because that'll be frustrating, as opposed to last week where really nothing happened. So, they've really picked up, and it's good to see. So, yes, very good. Save the series. It's been great. Yeah, some people are really dialed into it, and that's good to see. So if it's working for them, excellent. So, but as we've said before, for those people who've never seen Rebels, they may see it differently to those who are well versed with Rebels. And for those who've not seen it, and we're suddenly in the world between worlds, they could be scratching their heads going, what the effing hell is going on? So very, very cool. What do you reckon? Sorry, go.
Just a quick story point right off left field. Imagine if they said, well, he's dead, but we've got Gideon's force project with the M's, and they supercharge her with an injection, and she becomes one of the most powerful Jedi ever.
Sabine?
Yeah.
That means she's getting it from Grogu's blood, because that's what that's where they were getting it from in the first place. Imagine that. So, So what happens is... So they inject Sabine with some of this green shit, and all of a sudden she's got this taste of macaroons, and it's going out. And, she's got this sudden thing about eating live animals and whatever else. So, and you said a couple of weeks ago, oh, wouldn't it be great as a toy set? You've got Grogu, the Loth cat, an Ewok, a baby Ewok, and there was a Porg. And the next set is just Grogu by himself because he's eaten all the others. Absolutely fantastic. Anyway, look, that's the end of us. The next episode is out in 2 days. We'll be back next week to talk about episode 5. If you see it in the cinema, good luck to you. Good on you. I don't think we get that opportunity, but it'd be awesome if it could happen. But other than that, thanks for joining us. Any final words before we go, Mr. Aaron?
No, looking forward to Wednesday.
Yep, exactly right. All right, we'll see you all next week, everybody. Party hard, rock on, and we'll catch you then. Okay, bye for now.
Have a good night. See you.